Welcome to the EndurHunt podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lukosevic. Join me as I share my experiences as an emergent hunter, offer advice on how to overcome challenges, and pursue your passion for hunting. This is episode 3 of the EndurHunt podcast, So You Want to Start Hunting. I want to take this podcast to kind of talk about all the different things that go into getting started as a hunter, especially if you don't have anyone in your life that you know is actually a hunter. It can be really daunting, overwhelming, and I think it could prevent a lot of people who are curious about hunting, have an interest in starting to do it, but don't have the ability or don't have the willingness to take that leap of faith completely on their own. And I know how hard that is because I kind of did it. I had someone push me into it. If you want to hear a little bit of my background on getting started in hunting, go to episode 1, where I talk about my background a little bit. Although I had someone who offered to, he didn't even offer, he basically asked me to join him on a hunt out west. Even though he asked me to do that, when we came back home, it wasn't like he was there for me. He lived over 2 hours away. It wasn't reasonable for me to start hunting with him. He lived in a different state. And I work a full-time job and I needed to figure it out. I knew I wanted to do it, and so it was a matter of just putting in work and trying to figure it out. There are a few things that I think that are worth talking about that I definitely did not do when I was starting on my hunting journey. None of us are perfect, and I think we all have our own motivations for doing things, but one of the first decisions that you should consider when you get started in your hunting journey is, what is it that you want to hunt? I think a lot of hunting media today glorifies things like mule deer, elk, pronghorn, whitetail deer, all of the big game species, the big game hunting. Those can be some of the most difficult to find success at. And one of the critical things that I have learned from helping other people start hunting along in my journey is that if you don't find some success, you are probably going to struggle. And that means that maybe even though you have these dreams of taking a big buck, maybe you should focus on squirrel hunting or rabbit hunting or predator hunting or bird hunting. There's a lot of things out there, and chances are you can do them locally and get some help doing it. No one's going to give you the honey hole for their whitetail deer spot, but they might help you go out and shoot some dove, or they might take you out somewhere where you can go shoot squirrels or fox. And so I think one of the big questions is you should figure out what it is that you actually want to hunt. And part of that can be answered by saying first, why do you want to hunt? And think about what it is that you're hoping. Set a vision for yourself for what hunting will bring to your life. And the reason I'm talking about all of this and not talking about the brass tacks of what you need to do on the ground is because setting realistic expectations and understanding before getting started is going to be important. If you see people on social media who shoot 6 whitetail bucks a year, they go on 3 different elk hunts and they tag 3 bulls, I'm just going to break it to you right now. It's not that easy. It's really hard. It can take you a couple of seasons if you're grinding it out on your own without any mentors before you find any hunting success. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It takes a lot of work, grit, and determination in order to find success as a hunter. I don't know how I made it. I made it through an entire season basically not seeing anything, had a bunch of my stuff stolen, all before I was able to get a buck. And if I'm being honest, I would have happily taken a doe. I just happened to get lucky that day and there was a buck that came out. The thing that I didn't do was I never considered hunting anything other than big game. My first hunt was a mule deer elk combo hunt, really a mule deer hunt. And when I got back to New Jersey, I started researching what the hunting options are in the state of New Jersey. Despite the politics, New Jersey has a lot of whitetail deer, and there's public land all over the place. I thought it would be the easiest thing for me to do is get started by hunting whitetails. The reality is that's one of the harder things to do, especially to figure out on your own. And so my first recommendation for you is going to be try and leverage your network. One of the things that I learned after I started hunting was that more people than I was aware of that I went to school with or that I knew through friends were hunters. It was just something that they didn't talk about. And so the first thing that I think you should do is once you figure out what you want to hunt, you can do big game. If you live in an area where all you can do is hunt whitetails as far as big game goes, if you're an eastern hunter, by all means, you can jump straight into the big game hunting space. But I would encourage you to consider predator hunting and squirrel hunting or any other type of small game because people are going to be more likely to bring you in and show you some spots, and you can earn some trust and respect from those people, or even find access to hunting land, like private property, by trying to partner with someone and do some predator management. These are things that are not necessarily the direct path to big game success, but they will form good habits in the long term and help you build relationships that could lead to a mentor that can help you with hunting big game, or it could help you with finding access to property. It's not sexy. It is not a quick, easy win, but hunting is a long-term game. And if it is something that you are an adult who's just getting into it and you're not entirely sure what it is that you're going to do or how long the benefits are going to be for you, then you should consider all of the possibilities. I'm not saying you have to do small game. I did not start with small game. I went straight into mule deer and whitetails. I got into small game and predator hunting after I had already been hunting for several years. From my experience, I would encourage you to consider it as an option. I think it will help alleviate some of the struggles of getting started in hunting. The way you figure that out, in honest opinion, if you have social media, whether that is Facebook, Instagram, Go Wild, any of those platforms, Twitter maybe, where you have followers or friends that are actually your friends in your local area that you live, put a message out there and just say, hey, I'm getting interested in hunting. I was curious if there's anyone in my network that hunts and would be willing to give me some advice. You could specify you're trying to get into deer hunting. You could specify you're getting into waterfowl. You could specify you're getting into predators, whatever. Just put a feeler out there. I think you will be surprised at what happens. There are several people that I went to high school with who I was struggling, and halfway through that New Jersey season, they actually came out with me. I showed them what I was scouting, and they gave me some advice on what to do. Now, I won't lie, I was concerned at first that maybe this person is going to try and take my spot because I was seeing deer, I just couldn't figure it out. That never happened, fortunately. But your network can surprise you. It is something that is worth trying out. The next thing is leverage Facebook groups. There are Facebook groups for every state, I swear. I mean, maybe there are some states that don't have them, but I've lived in New Jersey and Texas, and I'm in hunting groups in both states. The thing that you have to realize by joining these groups is, particularly for big game hunting, it's going to be a battle to get anyone to give you information. People work really hard at finding their spots, finding their hunting holes, especially public land hunting. It can be a grind to find that place that you are going to see success and find animals. And for that reason, you need to tailor your questions appropriately. That being said, I have found people who, when you put out there, I just got started hunting, I'm an adult onset hunter, I have done some research and I have ideas on spots, but I'm really interested if someone would not mind meeting up with me, giving me advice. Maybe just offer to meet up with someone and talk to them or get a phone call. Don't necessarily try and get them to go out with you or have them taking you out to one of your spots because, again, spots are sacred. They're not going to give it up, especially to a stranger. So that is step one. I think you should try and leverage your network. You can also talk to just your best friends, your family, and tell your family that, like, hey, do you guys happen to know anyone in the family or friends that hunt or anything like that? I'm interested in getting to it. I think that if I did that initially, I would have seen success much, much sooner in my hunting career. It's one of those things where masculine ego, for sure, for me, I had way too much pride. I did not want to ask the question and show any sign of vulnerability. I think that that's a huge issue for men in particular, is we like to look like we know everything. And I have learned time and time and time again, whether it's in hunting or my professional atmosphere, that if you are willing to ask the basic questions, the questions that people think are probably so obvious that you need to know it already, but lots of people like you have the same question. I can guarantee it. If you are willing to ask those questions, the ones that are going to make you look stupid, someone will answer it, someone will respect you for it, and it'll help you in the long run because now you know something that you didn't know that you would have had to learn from the school of hard knocks. If I took those simple steps in the beginning, I think that my hunting journey would have seen success much quicker. I would have a lot more knowledge than I did initially. And so when we're talking about getting into hunting, my number one tip for your first thing you do is to leverage your network and try to find a mentor. You don't need to talk to strangers necessarily, but just do some due diligence, ask friends, ask family, put a message out there on your social media, see if there's anyone who's willing to reach out and help you, because that will shorten the learning curve significantly. All right, so you've tried to leverage your network. And despite reaching out to friends and family, putting messages out there on social media, checking hunting forums, you've got no one in your network. Or you're like me and you have a little bit of masculine pride, don't want to ask for help, want to figure it out on your own because that's just the type of person you are. Totally fine. Just know that it's going to be a longer journey, a steeper learning curve, and you're going to have to put in some effort and learn from the school of hard knocks. And that's totally okay. I did that and it worked out just fine. The next thing that you need to do, pretty much no matter what, and arguments can be made that you should do this first, but the reason I wanted to bring up the network first is having a mentor can go a long way in education across the board. But the one thing that everyone needs, no matter which state you're in, you need to go through a hunter safety course in order to get a hunting license and permits. Go to your state's website. If you just Google whatever state you live in, I'm in Texas. If you Google Texas hunting, you will find your state's Fish and Wildlife Service, Department of Wildlife Resources, whatever your state calls it. Your state has some formal regulation or regulatory body that is going to determine hunting seasons, do habitat research, work with biologists, all of that stuff. On that website, you'll be able to look up all the hunting regulations requirements. You will be able to figure out what you need to do to get your hunter safety or your hunter education. You will get some form of card, and that will prove that you took a hunter safety course. Sometimes they are online and field day. Sometimes it's all in person. You will have to determine what your state requires, and you can see that on the state website or the state regulations. Now, let's assume that you got your hunter safety, and you're not going to buy your hunting license just yet because it's not the season. You're just trying to get prepped, you're trying to figure out what you need to do. The next step, from my perspective, is to start doing research. Go back to your state's website, your Fish and Wildlife, Department of Wildlife Resources, whatever it is, and scour that website. Depending on, I think this is becoming more popular now. States have apps that have different hunting information. So for the state of Texas, I don't remember the name of the app, but we have an app where you can go in and you can search by species that you want to hunt, and it can tell you all of the different hunting seasons based on areas. Or you can go into the county that you live in, that if you can hunt in the county you live in, or you look up the county for the area that you're hunting, you can see what the different hunting regulations and seasons are. They tend to be broken up by either species or type of hunting. So you will see different regulations for small game versus big game. You might also see different regulations for predator hunting. Every state manages their wildlife differently, and so you'll have to determine, based on the state you live in or the state that you're hunting, what those regulations are. But finding them is very easy. The language can be confusing at times, and so you'll see people on hunting groups in Facebook or hunting forums asking questions that are kind of idiotic. Half of those people didn't read the regulations, probably more than half, and they just want someone to do the work for them. The other half legitimately don't understand it because the language isn't always clear. But the thing that you want to understand is, when can you hunt? And secondly, where can you hunt? Start looking at the public land, assuming you're hunting public land. If you don't have access to a network of someone that can be a mentor for you, I'm going to assume that you do not have access to private land. I'm going to assume that you have to hunt public land the way that I started. And so depending on where you live in your state and what public land is available for hunting, you will be able to determine where you have access to. And so this is when you have to ask yourself, how far are you willing to travel to hunt? Keep in mind that if you're hunting big game, for example, they're crepuscular. They're most active at sunrise and sunset. That hour window, 30 minutes before, 30 minutes after sunrise, and same for sunset, is usually when you're going to see the most activity. If you want to hunt animals at that time, that means you need to be ready to go before those times kick off. So you either need to be in the tree if you're doing white-tailed deer out east, or you need to be on your glassing knob if you're going hunting out west, assuming that that's the type of hunting that you're doing before then. And so that needs to be a factor for you. If you think, oh, I can drive an hour to go hunt, that's no big deal. But then you realize, well, sunrise is at 6 o'clock. And the spot I want to hike to is 2 miles in. And it's going to take me about 40 minutes to get into my spot and get set up. Well, that means that if I want to be there, if sunrise is at 6, and it's going to take me that long to do that, and I want to be set up 40 minutes before then, next thing you know, you have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And so you have to determine, do I actually want to go out that far? Even though maybe that's a 1,000-acre chunk or 2,000-acre chunk of public land, and there's a closer one that's only 100 acres or 50 acres or something like that, that is a question that you're going to have to determine for yourself. But start going onto your Fish and Wildlife's website, Department of Wildlife Resources, look at the public land that is available to you, and make a decision about where you want to hunt. Then Beyond that, once you find the place that you want to hunt, we can dig in a level deeper and say that you should get a mapping software like Onyx, which is the one that I use. Onyx is amazing, but the thing that I'll say when you're getting started, you're not going to know anything about how to read that map. You're not going to really understand it. What I would encourage you to do, get the app anyway, even if you just download it for your state. When I started, I just had New Jersey. And find that piece of public land, go there in the summer, off season if you can, and just walk around. Look for sign, look for animals, look for areas where maybe you can figure out that, oh, maybe they'll come through here. Maybe this looks like a bed. You might not know what all of those things are, but you could if you see deer scat on the ground, you're going to recognize, well, this is some kind of animal scat. So maybe I can mark this on the map in Onyx. And just go through, look for game trails, try to identify some things that maybe look like animals are here. And you can use that to mark it out on the map and start figuring out, okay, this is a sort of pattern of life. Keeping in mind that these things change, particularly for big game throughout the year. So what they're using as a trail in the summer may not be the case in November during the rut. Any experience that you have in the woods, being able to put feet on the ground and looking at sign in real time is going to benefit you. Things that you can put in your memory bank that when you are hunting, you'll be able to recognize and lean on when you are hunting. You have a spot picked out that you like to hunt, you've started scouting it, you're walking around, great. Now is the next thing that comes into consideration, weapon choice. For me, when I was making this decision, and this is just my experience, the decision that I made, everyone is different. One of my best friends that still lives in New Jersey chose a completely different route than me. But we're going to use New Jersey as an example because it's where I started hunting. The state of New Jersey, there is no rifle season, period. The 3 weapons that you can choose from are bow, shotgun, muzzleloader. That's it. I wanted to be able to hunt as much as I could during the season. And I realized by reading the regulations, looking at the public land available, and checking the seasons on those pieces of public land, keeping in mind that depending on the piece of public land and the regulations of the body that oversee it, the seasons could be different than the rest of the county, for example. And so you do need to be aware of the different regulations that could be affecting your hunt. But I made the realization that if I want to hunt as much as possible, I need to hunt with a bow. And so that was the choice that I made, was I wasn't going to go in on a shotgun. I was not going to go in on a muzzleloader. I made the decision that, okay, if I want to maximize my hunting experience, my knowledge, and my chances of success purely through repetitions and seat on stand, then I needed to get a bow. I went with a compound bow. Depending on the state that you live in, maybe you can get a crossbow. I'm pretty sure in New Jersey during the archery season, you can use a crossbow. One thing I should mention too is don't knock people based on their weapon choice. If someone wants to choose a crossbow, let them shoot a crossbow. It doesn't affect you. Live your life and move on, okay? Now that that tiny little rant is over, I made the decision that I wanted to shoot with a bow. It would maximize my opportunity throughout the year. I could use it for every season. Even the permit shotgun season and the permit muzzleloader seasons, I could still use a bow, so I would have the most time out in the field. One of my best friends, whose name is also Andrew, just got into hunting. He just got his hunting license this year, 2023, and he decided that he wants to go the muzzleloader route. He bought a muzzleloader and he is going to hunt the permit season, which is, I think, 1 week, maybe 2 weeks. But that is the decision that he made based on his values and what he is looking for out of a hunting experience. So it is subjective for everybody. Now that you have a piece of land picked out, look at what those weapon types are, see when the seasons are for those weapon types, and make sure that you still want to actually hunt that season and that piece of land. If you want to hunt a different weapon type or a different part of the year, maybe you need to look at a different piece of land or accept that, well, this is when I can hunt, so this is the weapon choice that I need to have. I plan on having a podcast dedicated to the different weapons types, some of the advantages, disadvantages, and how to make that decision for yourself. At this point, let's recap where we are. All right, so you've leveraged your network. You either found a mentor or didn't. Either way is fine. The rest of the steps are going to be the same. You have your hunter education. You presumably also have your hunter license. You have found the piece of land that you want to hunt on, and you know what weapon choice you're going to use. The next thing you have to get into is gear. So gear can vary significantly depending on the type of hunting and style of hunting you're doing and the game. The gear that you need for big game, tree stand hunting, for example, is much different than big game spot and stalk hunting. Same thing for small game or predator hunting. What you need is going to vary based on the type of game you're chasing. The things that are pretty much universal in any type of hunting, the things that I have brought on me with every type of hunt I have done, is some form of backpack or vest, depending. So if I'm doing upland bird hunting or small game hunting, I will bring a vest or a belt. They usually have some pockets for storing your shells if you're using a shotgun, which is the most common way that I do. I don't own an air rifle or a 22 or something where I can use a rifle like that. I pretty much just use a shotgun for upland and small game. And they usually have a pocket on the back where if you're shooting squirrels or rabbits, you're able to put them in there and store them so you don't have to carry them. The backpack is useful for any type of hunting, whether you are doing spot and stalk out west or spot and stalk out east, wherever you live, that's fine. But backpacks can store food, water, all of the rest of your gear, and they can help sustain you over an extended period of time, especially if you're trying to go out deep. It is beneficial to have a backpack. The next thing you need, and well, you may not actually need it. You're going to need to read the regulations. Hunter Safety Orange or Hunter Blaze Orange, whatever your state calls it. You'll want to read the regulations on what you need and when you need to use it. So depending on the season and the state, it can vary significantly. So in New Jersey, for example, during the archery season, you don't need to wear Hunter Orange. But in Texas, if you are hunting an archery season while there's a concurrent rifle season of any kind, so the county that I hunt, for example, you can hunt squirrels and rabbits year-round. There is no bag limit. You can hunt them depending on the piece of land with a shotgun, with a rifle. Regulations state that if you are hunting on public land for any season that is concurrent with a gun season of any kind, you are supposed to wear Hunter Orange. And Hunter's Orange in Texas is a hat and a vest. It was the same thing in New Jersey. Hunter's Orange in Wyoming, for example, is all you need to do is wear a cap. I hunted private land in Wyoming, so I actually don't know if that's true for public land. You might need to wear a cap and a vest. I'll refer to the regulations. And I know that from my elk hunt in Arizona that you don't need to wear Hunter's Orange at all. I wore Hunter's Orange for 3 days of my 6-day hunt and just realized that I was the only person wearing orange. One thing I will say about Hunter's Orange is it is there to protect you. It is so that other hunters see you, don't mistake you for an animal, and shoot you. So if you want to be alive, read the regulations, make sure you're not breaking the law first of all, but also keep yourself safe. Safety is the number one thing in hunting pretty much all of the time. Those are the two things that I will encourage. No matter what type of hunting you're doing, you should have some form of pack and or vest and Hunter's Orange. Those are the two things that you pretty much need no matter what. And the last thing that you will always need is some form of game care. That will be either a set of shears for small game and a knife, like a boning knife, so that you can skin squirrels and rabbits, depending on the method you're using. Or it could be a set of knives and game bags if you so choose to hunt big game and you're trying to chase animals like elk, pronghorn, or deer of either species. You're going to want like a boning knife or a fillet knife, depending on what you're comfortable carrying. Potentially a bone saw so you can get through those hindquarters. The camp that you fall in for the type of knives you bring, I think you're going to learn from experience. I can say that in the 5 years I've been hunting now, I still change the knives I use all the time. I have tried the different replaceable blades, fixed blades, and every time I go on a new season, I find something more or less that I don't like about the knives I'm using. So what I will say is just pick up a set, try it out. If you don't like it, just use it as a learning opportunity to see what you wish it had and then try to find the right piece of gear that fits the needs that you have. Very subjective, like mostly everything is in hunting. What you get out of it is based on what your personal goals, ambitions, and reasons are. So those are really the three primary things that you need outside of the clothing that you're going to wear, of course. You don't actually need camo. I would encourage you to get any kind of camo. When I started out, I wore my military camo. I didn't care. Eventually, I bought some camo from Cabela's, and now I use First Light. Not sponsored or affiliated. I just like First Light. Choose what you want. It all works. It's fine. As you grow in your hunting career, again, like I said with the knives, you will figure out the type of gear that you like or don't like. You'll find the nuances. The important thing in the beginning is to just get started. Don't have to buy the most expensive gear. You don't have to buy the right gear. You don't have to have everything. You just need to get in the woods and get started. That is the most important thing, is getting out there and getting started. I'll briefly talk about some of the other gear that you might consider depending on the season that you're hunting. So if you are doing whitetail tree stand hunting, for example, you're going to need a tree stand or a saddle. You're going to need a harness. You're going to need a gear tether to bring gear down and up. And depending on state regulations, you probably want to get either a hook that you can put into the tree to hold your gear, or you're going to want to buy a strap system that you can use to secure around the tree that will hold things like your pack, your bow if you're using a bow, all the other miscellaneous things that you may have with you. In my opinion, whitetail deer tree stand hunting, or any type of tree stand hunting, I know that some people do that for elk and mule deer. In my opinion, that is the most gear cumbersome hunting season and hunting style. You need more than any other type of hunting. If you are on the ground spot and stalk hunting, you don't need nearly as much gear. You just need what you can carry in you. The other thing that I would always recommend and encourage people to have is some form of rangefinder and binoculars. Again, you don't have to go crazy. You could even not hunt with them in the beginning. If you had to choose between either having binoculars or a rangefinder, personally, I would tell you to get the rangefinder first. And the reason is, if you're new to hunting and you're starting out with archery, especially, well, not even especially, because depending on your competency with a rifle, you want to know the range that you're shooting at. In my opinion, that's one of the most important things, because you do not want to wound an animal. It can be deafening to your ambitions if you wound an animal. It happens to everyone. At some point, you are going to take a shot that doesn't go the way you want. You will gut shot a deer, you will miss a deer, you will hit it in the shoulder and watch it run away. Unfortunately, it's going to happen. But as you're getting started, it is just hard enough as it is to have success of any kind and to have an opportunity. You don't want to make it harder on yourself by not knowing the appropriate range that the animal's at and taking an accurate shot. So if you can only have one, I would encourage you to have a rangefinder over binoculars. If you can afford both, get both. A lot of people will say buy once, cry once. You should save up and buy the nicest thing. Look, I'd be lying if I said that that's how I've done anything. I started out buying cheap rangefinders, cheap binoculars, and I have slowly upgraded over time. Am I spending more money that way? Probably, but it's getting me out in the field, and I think I would have told myself if I needed to save up $300 or $400 to buy my first rangefinder that I can't really hunt until then, and it would have delayed my hunting progress. And so I would encourage you to just use the gear that you can get with the budget that you have and get out in the field. It's the most important thing. You will become a good hunter through repetition and experience, not by having the best gear that you can have. Buying the best gear that you can get is only going to refine you. You need the good foundations first. So, on the gear front, I'm going to try and recap this because I did a little bit of ranting. You need some form of pack and or vest, depending on the season and style of hunting that you're doing. You'll need some form of hunter's orange, maybe. Depends on your state. Please read the regulations. You will need a game care of some kind, whether that is just a set of shears or if it's a set of knives and some game bags. That is dependent on the type and style of hunt that you're doing. And then some form of glass. Rangefinders, binoculars. Spotting scopes are the last thing you need when you get started. I've had one for 2 years now, and I've used it on one hunt. And most of the time, I don't even consider bringing them out. In the beginning stages of hunting, you do not need a spotting scope. Trust me, you don't need a spotting scope. So that is where we're at this point. So you have your spot picked out, your license, your hunter education. You've got some basic gear. I didn't talk about boots. I didn't really go into camo. We could spend entire podcasts on that probably. You have some of the basic knowledge ready to go. And now the next step is research and practice. I think that one of the most intimidating things for someone is taking that shot at the first animal, the first opportunity that they get. And so you're going to want to practice. If you can practice year round, you should. I acknowledge that that's unrealistic for most people, that it's just burdensome to have to practice all the time, and so I get it. You're probably not going to do that, and that's okay. You don't have to. But the sooner before the season starts you can practice and get the most reps in as possible, the more comfortable you will feel when the time comes to take that shot. Because I can promise you that you are not going to rise to the level of your expectations. You are going to fall to the level of your training. You need to practice, whether that's behind a bow, a rifle, or a shotgun. Practice, practice, practice. Know your weapon, know you, practice in realistic situations if you can, but seriously, I cannot stress it enough. Practice. When the moment comes, you will kick yourself if you wound an animal because you didn't take a shot or you rushed a shot. Practice and try to make it realistic. I cannot stress that enough. And then the last thing is just research and scout. Read up on forums about the piece of land that you're trying to hunt. Put boots on the ground. Try to get insight into the animal's behavior, different areas that they go. Try to be as prepared as possible before the season starts, and don't stop once the season kicks off. Look, when you're just starting and hunting, you should not hold out, in my opinion, for the biggest animal that you can find. You shouldn't hold out for that 8-point or 10-point unless your state has specific antler restrictions that you're required to do so. Hunt what you can get. Try to get experience, build repetitions by hunting animals that are realistic. And that might mean going for does. Again, it might mean small game hunting. The more practice you can get, the more proficient you will be, the calmer you will be in the heat of the moment when the opportunity rises. And you want to set yourself up, and you do that by practice and scouting, getting boots on the ground. Unfortunately, at this point, right, it's different for people who have mentors and those who don't. If you have a mentor, the scouting and the practice part is going to be so easy. You'll have an accountability partner. You'll have someone who can give you advice. If you're doing it on your own, you're just going to have some self-discipline, and you're going to have to practice on your own, put in the work, and try to figure things out. It's possible. You can do it. I've done it. And so I know it can be done. It's just a lot of work. And at this point, honestly, it's really up to you. There's nothing else left that I can say other than get out there and go get some experience. I will try and create some more podcasts in the future that go into specific styles of hunting. So I'll break down some spot and stalk, some tree stand hunting. Again, I want to talk about the specific weapons types and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's very subjective. I started out in a tree stand hunting white-tailed deers. I don't particularly like tree stand hunting anymore. I love spot and stalk hunting. I don't want to go back in a tree stand. Even hunting whitetail in Texas, I kind of just want to do it on the ground. I'm not a fan of tree stands. You might love tree stand hunting. That's totally cool. So figure out what works for you, the style of hunting you want to do. Put in the practice with your weapon. Know it, know how to use it, know how to take care of it. Scout. Be ready before the season starts. And then when the season does start, continue scouting and then put in the work. Try to set yourself up for success. You're going to fail. You're going to stumble. You're going to spook animals. You're going to miss shots. It's okay. The important thing is to not give up. Continue pushing, and eventually you will find success. And that goes for big game and small game. Trust me, when you want to hunt squirrels, they're going to be hard to shoot. They're going to be difficult to come up. You're going to get nervous. When you want to hunt whitetail, you're going to see squirrels. You're going to think, man, I should have been hunting squirrels today. It goes both ways. Trust me. The key is, and I'm going to have a podcast about this, persistence is key. You cannot give up. All right. That was a long podcast. I feel like it was a little bit of rambling, but those are some of the foundational steps that I can say will get you started on your hunting journey. Don't be afraid to ask questions. If there is anything that I didn't cover that you would like me to cover, if you're watching this on YouTube, please put a comment down below. I will do the best that I can to answer any questions that come up. I know that this is a huge topic. It's totally broad, and you can cover it a million different ways and talk about it forever. So please, if there's something that I didn't mention that you have a question about, please put it in the comments. If you are an experienced hunter and you think that there's something that I missed that should be given as advice, also put that down in the comments. Please help other people who are starting out their journey. I know that you had to go through trials and tribulations. Share your experience. Share your advice down in the comments below. If you're listening to this on Spotify or just on the audio version, you can follow me at EndurHunt on Instagram. If you have questions, please shoot me a DM. I'd be happy to answer them or comment on one of my posts as well. I'll do my best to get back to those comments. I wanted to thank you for listening to this and taking the time out of your day. I know that this is only my third podcast, and so the people listening to this, if you've made it this far, are probably friends and family, but I appreciate your support regardless on my journey to help other emergent hunters get out there. Again, thank you for taking the time to listen to me, and we'll talk to you guys next time.